A few days ago, I was asked to sit. Some of you might have seen it. It was very advertised in the New York area. I was asked to sit on a panel together with a psychologist and a dayan and a therapist to talk about the causes of divorces in young families, like within the first 5 years of marriage, which is everyone's worst nightmare, that such a thing should happen. And to be honest, when the psychologist there in Ohel called me, I was not super excited for this one. It's not my, I'm usually before a Q&A or a panel, I'm usually not nervous at all. I'm happy, if I sit with a bunch of guys and we could talk about things, like I'm very comfortable. Before this, for 2 days, felt like cold nervousness in me. My son-in-law was in my house and he was like, so weird, I never see you this nervous before for a panel. But to speak in public about the causes of divorce, I didn't know why they thought I was an expert in it, and you don't know who's going to listen to it. There were about 60 people there in person. There were 800 people on Zoom. And now it's available, the recording is available, so that means that more people are listening to it. Baruch Hashem, I'm getting good feedback from it. It was very, very overwhelming. This psychologist that's there is someone who I know from yeshiva, from back in the day, a very, very responsible Ben Torah. He's a psychologist who's a Talmud Chacham. And because of that, I asked him if he thought there would be a Tayelis, and he said there would be, and I trusted him, and hopefully there was. I thought, we haven't gotten together here for a while. I thought that maybe in the more comfortable setting of our share, that we could go over some of the things that I said, which many of my points you've heard from me before. It was basically like a public Tuesday morning share. You could imagine how uncomfortable I was. And also some of the other speakers also had very good points. And then since that panel, I've been reflecting on it. It affected me also. I didn't just go to darshan. Like, some of the things that were said affected me, and there were things to learn from it. So I figured the truth is I don't even know if we can get through the whole thing in the time of this share. But just to talk a little bit, I'm going to very briefly touch on the points that I made, and as I'm telling it over to you, the reason I'm going to keep it brief is because these are points that I was smiling as I said them. I knew that if any of you would listen, I think you heard it, if any of you would listen, you'd be like, all right, I heard that share. I know that share. So it's nothing that you haven't heard from me, but it was interesting to kind of serve it in public, to serve my dish in public, and to see what the reaction is. And I've been getting very, very positive and very moving reactions. So the way they set it up was they had Dr. Neuhoff, he's the psychologist, and they had the four of us sitting there. It was myself on the end of the table, and then next to me was a dayan for the Beis Havad. His name is Rav David Grossman. He's a Lakewood Rav dayan, and I think he's the founder of the Beis Havad. In other words, the Beis Havad is a bezdin. They do a lot of choshen mishpat things. It's not just about divorces, but unfortunately, one of the big functions of a bezdin is to do divorces. I've been there at the Beis Havad. I've been there, and he was there. I actually have, and maybe I would address it with him, I actually have, at some point, I do intend at some point to bring my issue to a bezdin, to discuss it. I don't mean to bezdin, I mean to address it with a bezdin. I do think that I'm assuming I'm the only one in the room that was actually present in a bezdin while a get was given. That's my assumption here. Okay, I did it a few times. the first few gittin that I was at were in a Rav's house. I was by Rav Bick in Borough Park, and he does gittin in his house. There's a... Okay, I could tell already that we're going to have to do this over 2 weeks, but okay. There's a cipher. A get needs a cipher because a get has to be written in Ksav Ashuris. And it has to be written very, very particular way, and there's a specific nusach, and the halacha is very, very, very minute, and a little change could make the get puzzle. Okay? I'll just, once I'm stretching this over to shiurim, I'll tell you this fascinating thing that happened a few weeks ago. Did I tell you about my shiloh on a get? With the wrong name? This woman had the wrong name in her get? I think so. What?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah? Right. How many of you know what I'm talking about? How many of you know what I'm talking about? Besides the two of you. Okay, so let me. I don't like repeating myself, but I also don't want to. This is a good shiloh. There was a guy, which I think Dovi knows him a little bit. There's a guy in my shul who's he's 70 years old, and he's had quite the journey. He became from a few years ago. When I say a few years ago, like 5 years ago. And he went from being like the most not from guy you can imagine. Like he looks like the kind of guy you would imagine, like owns a tire shop in Tennessee. No, like that kind of personality. And you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you know the guy. And he came to Waterbury. He used to live in Waterbury back in the day, and he's been looking for a wife ever since he came. Saw you at Sinai, you know, these type of things. And he found this woman in Maine that he decided to marry. And we had to do a hatafas dam bris. His family is so not religious. We weren't sure if he had a kosher or bris. We did hatafas dam bris beforehand. And you saw pictures of it, Benny. Yeah. And because Loey did the music. Right. Anyway, so he's married. He married this woman, very nice woman in Maine, from Maine, and her name that she goes by is Beth. She goes by the name Beth, and of course Beth is not her Hebrew name. So when I met with them, they asked me to be Mesader Kedushin. I wanted to know her exact Hebrew name so I could put it in the ksuba. So she tells me that her name is Basia something. Basia Rivka. I'm making that up. I don't remember the second name. But her name is Basia something. I wrote down the names. Good. And then I didn't look back at my notes because I had a better source of a name. Because this woman had been previously married, and you can't be Mesader Kedushin by a chasana unless you know that the get, that she received a kosher get, because she's still married to her first husband if she didn't get a kosher get. I can't marry her off to her second husband if she's still married to the first. So I have to get a reliable edus that her first get was kosher. So she got divorced in Boston, and there's Boston as a very good Besdin, and I got from the Boston Besdin, I got a document that's written after a get where the dayanim write the information of the get and they sign their names. They actually sign, like it's not just like a secretary sends it out. Each dayan signs his name to this information, and I got a picture of it sent to my phone so that I could use that to first of all know that the get was proper, and also it has the information on it, what her name is. And it said that her name was, I don't remember, some Yiddish name, not Basia. Bela, I think Bela. And I didn't remember that she told me Basia. So I was like, okay, Bela Rivka. Okay, I'll write that on the ksuba. Anyway, it's like an hour before the wedding. The wedding was in an afternoon in my shul parking lot. Don't ask. This Rav that's helping her, calls me and says, so the ksuba's ready? I I said, yeah, I have a text of Ksuba on my computer. I just plug in the names, and the Ksuba comes out. I have to plug in the names and the dates and everything. I have to go through it very carefully. But I have this text. Okay, I'm putting in the names. I said I'm putting in the names. Bela Rivka. He says, Bela? Her name is Basia. I said, no. Her name is Bela. It says on the document from the get. She was divorced with the name Bela. That's her real name. So the guy says, no, her name is Basia. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Her name, it's right here. Her name is Bela. Okay, let's call her. He conferences her in because she was getting her makeup done. And she's like, do we really have to talk about this now? I'm getting my makeup done. Like, yeah, we really have to talk about this now. You might have nice makeup, but you might not be getting married. I said, what is your Hebrew name? She says, Basia Rivka. I made up the Rivka part, but Basia Rivka. So I say, yeah, but your get said Bela Rivka. She says, yeah, that was a mistake. Okay, so what are we doing about the wedding? I was like, if that was a mistake, you're still married to your first husband. Suddenly it starts hitting her, like what we're dealing with here. What am I supposed to do? Now it's 45 minutes till the wedding. Okay, what do I do? Okay, so my Rav, I very rarely call him because he's very, very, very busy and not easy to reach. But my Rav personally is Rabbi Yaakov Hapfer from Baltimore. Long story how I got to him, but he's my Rav. I love him very much, and he loves me too. And he's impossible to reach him. I couldn't call him, so I called his secretary's emergency line. She picks up, and I said, hi, Sonnenschein from Waterbury. And I said, I'm about to be inside the Kedushin by a chasana, and an issue came up with the get of the Kala. She's like, yeah, that sounds like an emergency. The Rav will call you back in 5 minutes. So he calls me back. I told him the Shaila. I was a wreck. Oh, so before I spoke to him, I did research. I spoke to her, how did this happen? Basia, Bela, how did it happen? She told me a fascinating story. I know we're doing a little Hilchas Gittin, but it's worth it. Trust me, it's worth it, and it's a good education, and it's a great story. She told me as follows. Her name was Beth. She was named Beth since she's a little kid. By her Kiddush, when she was born, her parents named her Bela Rivka. That was her name. But she didn't even know her Hebrew name. She just knew she was Beth. And when she was about 14 years old, there was a boy that really liked her. And he went to Israel. And when he came home, he's like, Beth, imagine he's in that store, Meir Sharim, like, Beth, what could be her Hebrew name? So he decided her Hebrew name was Basia. So he made her a necklace that said Basia. So she's a teenager, she's a high school girl. This boy comes home from Israel with a necklace, Basia. Boom, her name is Basia. She was good to go. She wears her Basia necklace, we're good to go. Okay? And then forever and after, she just assumed her name was Basia. Like, she never even thought about it. It was just like, her name was Basia. So when she was getting divorced, the Beis Din in Boston asked her, what's her name? She said, Basia Rivka. That's her name. Then a few years later, did I switch it? Yeah. Could be I switched it. Okay, so you'll figure it out. But she assumed her name was Basia, and she told me. Now you'll cop all the details. She told me on the phone before I read her name was Bela, but the documentation said Basia, the other way around. Okay, because she called herself Basia all those years, and then approximately about 3 years ago, after she was divorced, she was schmoozing with her mother, who's still alive, and her mother's like, I don't know why the last 50 years you walked around with the name Basia. We didn't name you Basia, we named you Bela. So this lady, she's very tamimah. She was like, okay, fine, Bela. So she switched back. Now she's Bela. I spoke to Rabbi Hapfer. I was like, I said, there is such a thing, by a get, there's such a concept as a shem shenishtaka, which means that if you, let's say you, not you, because Hashem, you'll never have to get a get, but if somebody would have, let's say, a name that they hate, and they would decide they're getting themselves a new name, okay? So let's say somebody was named, some kind of a Yiddish, name that he doesn't like, and he decides to get himself. His name from now on. His name is Moshe. He gets an Aliyah, Moshe. He's not using that name anymore. There's such a thing as making your name forgotten. It's not my name anymore. There is such a thing. So I was discussing with a chaver of mine before I spoke to Rabbi Hapfer. I was discussing that, okay, fine, if her name really was Bela, but then when this boy gave her the necklace, she decided she wants to be Basia. So Bela is forgotten. Fine. So now her name is Basia. But I understand the Bela forgotten part. But who named her Basia? She never got an aliyah. Nobody ever davened. They never did a tefillah. Basically, some random guy with raging hormones named her Basia. That's basically what happened, right? That's crazy. So that's it. That's her name now, and she accepted that. But like that, Yikari Shema B'Yisrael, like that's it. Next time you buy a necklace, a Me'er Sharim, you think about this story, you know. So anyway, so I spoke to Rabbi Hapfer. He told me go be Masad Kedushin. Just put Basia on the ksuba. Tell her forget this whole thing her mother said that she was named Bela. It's done. It's over. Her name is Basia. The boy named her Basia. She's Basia. I said to the Rav, how does this work? So he tells me, a person has a right to designate a name for themselves. I didn't know this. It's a big chiddush to me. A person has a right to do that. He tells me, my name is Yaakov. If I decide I don't like the name Yaakov, and I tell you from now on, I'm Leib. My name is Leib. I said, but Rav, in 50 years, I don't know if she used either name more than 2 or 3 times. Her name is Beth. It's not like now she always goes by this name. She doesn't go by the names at all. He said to me, yes, but if someone asked her what her Hebrew name is, what would she have said? I said, Basia. And he said, V'haraya. When the Boston Besdin asked her what her name was, what did she say? She said, Basia. And then he gave me a little musser, and he said, when a Besdin says something, you trust it. So that was my story. But anyway, getting back to Bati Dinim, I remember where I am. I'm in a parentheses of a parentheses. I remember. Getting back to Bati Dinim, so it's you have a sefer. I told you that I used to do it in Rav Bick's house. We used to do a few gittin in Rav Bick's house, and there's a sefer. He's all the dayanim know him. His name is Rav Lichter, is his name. And he's a Chassidish guy, and he's he's the fastest get in the country. Okay, he could write. It takes about 45 minutes to write a get. For him, other people could take an hour and a half, but he's very, very fast. It's Ksav Ashura. He writes it very fast. He knows the halachas. He never agrees with the Rav that's doing the get. By the way, he bad some holes that all these rabbanim don't know getting as well as he does. There was a get in my shul a few years ago that there was a get in my shul that he came as the Rav and the Sefer. He was in heaven. Okay, that he was very happy with. But he came by Rav Bick. He fought with Rav Bick the whole time, but he came by Rav Bick. He follows the psak of the Rav that's running the get. But it's very, very particular. Anyway, the point that I want to bring out, that I really do want to work on, maybe one day one of you will be a Dayan or an Av Bezdin or something and could help me with this agenda, is that even now, like when you walk into the Beis Avad in Lakewood, or you walk into a different Bezdin for a get, so you have the Dayanim, you have the Eidim. You need Eidim that are trained Eidim, because they also have to write their names in Ksav Ashuri, and they have to say certain things. It's also there's a lot of things to say, because things have to be very, very clear. And everything is just explain to you how. If those of you that did Gittin with me might remember this, but everything has to be said like let's say his name is Yosef Moshe, and he goes by the name Joe, and he's also named Yassi, so his name is the Shem Habal Yosef Moshe HaMechuna Joe Demiskuri Yassi. And then the wife could be, Genendel Sprinza Rivka Bela, that's called Genendi, who's also called Bela, and each thing, Genendel Sprinza Rivka, and every person has to say, the Eidim have to say, the guy says his own name, like I would say, me, Yosef ben Aaron Shmuel, is accepting, to be an aid for Yosef the Miskari to the Mochad of this, I was giving a get to, and it goes on. There's a lot of repetition like that, okay? So you have the Bezdin, mostly it's one Dayan, and there are other Rabbanim there, they form a Bezdin. You don't really need a Bezdin, you just need a Dayan. There are Eidim, there's the Sefer, but Rabbi say, there's a couple getting divorced in the room. And they're not there for fun. And it's very often very emotional. And it's very stressful. And sometimes they're at each other's throats. And there are details that need to be worked out. And sometimes an agreement that still needs to be signed. And in general, and this is a teva thing, I don't say this as a criticism, the type of rabbanim that are dayanim, that are paskening on every kutzay shel yud of a get, are not the type of hand-holding, hand over your shoulder, mushy kind of rav that's helping you emotionally through it. So I've been to many gittin where you have that initial thing, getting the get started, and then there's this 45-minute break while the sefer writes, where the Eidim have to be watching him the whole time, like b'fanai nechtav, right? The Eidim have to be watching him, right, or they have to be there. And the husband and wife have to be there also. The husband's not allowed to leave, you know that? He's not allowed to leave because we're chayshish that maybe he'll be makabel a t'nai or he'll make a declaration. Like everything has to be, and he has to be made that he has no declaration, that no t'naim and no nedarim and no, so everyone has to stay on the premises.
Why does the wife have to stay there?
I think it could be that I don't remember if that's just a technicality or that's a halach. I don't remember. It could be also she. I don't remember. But so sometimes the husband comes with his guy or his parents, and the wife comes with her, her friend or her parents or her rebbitzin or something. But what ends up happening, and this is my macha, what ends up happening is you have this woman sitting there who's getting divorced. That means like her life is over. Okay, it's a terrible moment. And the dayanim are sitting around waiting for the get to be written. What do you think they're doing? They're doing what guys do, and they're sitting around bored waiting. They're schmoozing. I've heard laughter coming out of the Bezdin during that time. They're joking, they're schmoozing. I was once at a Bezdin by a get, okay? And a friend of mine who's a Rav heard that I was in the neighborhood. I'm sitting with this guy getting divorced. The guy comes in, hey, what's going on? And he walks over to the guy getting divorced because he's a Rav. So, you're getting divorced today? Oh, very nice. What's your name? Where are you from? Who are your parents? I wanted to punch the guy. And the guy was losing his mind, okay? He was trying to be polite, but when he left, he was like, what is that guy? Not even who is that guy, and so I have this thing that I want to work with Batei Din in my dream to create a get 100% lahalacha where the experience is a therapeutic experience. Where maybe there's a social worker there, with the dayanim are trained also, like in the way that they speak and so on. Because how can a guy sat in yeshiva his whole life, became a baki in Hilchas Gittin, and knows it backwards and forwards with every single tshuva, but it doesn't mean that he understands that when he laughs at a joke that someone made because someone's getting married tomorrow, whatever, like a random thing, that this woman in the room that's hearing laughter in the middle of her get is getting upset. When my son was born, my second, my wife had a cesarean. So what they did was sometimes when you have a C-section, they put you out, but very often they just give a anesthesia called an epidural, and it numbs come out her whole body, and they do the surgery. They put a curtain over her. I was sitting next to her by her head, talking to her. She couldn't, and the baby was being taken out. Okay, it was a shtickle emergency, but Baruch Hashem, everything went well. The surgeon that was doing it was an Israeli woman, a doctor in NYU, a very, 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 very skilled doctor. And she was very chilled out. She did this 1,000 times, maybe 10,000 times. She was laughing her head off about stuff while she was doing the surgery. At some point, we told the anesthesiologist, please tell the doctor to shut her mouth. Like, I'm very happy that you did it 10,000 times, but this is our first C-section, thank you. And we're a little nervous right now. It's jarring. So anyway, that's my that was with me. You hear what I'm saying? I think it's a kedai thing to think about. Tovi, we're going to do this together? What? Yeah. I think it's a kedai thing. We have to create a situation in Bezdin when someone dies, and you go to the funeral home. You don't have anyone there just laughing their heads off. You don't have that, Even the funeral people that are doing it, they're kind of trained, like how you handle, even if they're checked out emotionally even because they do this every day. But, we need to make that professional, therapeutic, inviting atmosphere for the worst day of a person's life. There are many people that would say that divorce is worse than death, for what people are going through. And for some divorces, it is that way. Anyhow, ad kan my macha. But Bekitzer, so, wow, I'm on the second guy on the panel. Okay, so that's the second guy. He's the founder of a Bezdin, and he sees a lot of things, and his wife also is involved in helping the women and deal with how to place the children and so on. It was just the hardest stuff. The next one over was Dr. Norman Blumenthal. By a show of hands, how many of you know who he is? Two people in the room? Wow. Okay, so Dr. Norman Blumenthal is one of the most, I don't want to insult anyone, but he's one of the most famous psychologists in the Jewish community, maybe the most, arguably. And you ever met with him? You ever heard a thing from him? Not really. No, in school they don't bring the. So he's involved. He's involved like with High Lifeline, with a lot of these things. He's involved with when tragedies happen. He helps with the trauma, with the crisis management. He's called for these things, like the craziest, wackiest things that go on. They call him, and you would think this guy's walking around like a heavy guy. He's the funniest guy. Okay, he's funny. He has a sense of humor. He's in a good mood. He starts the panel. He sits there when it's his turn to speak. He sits there. He goes, "Okay, there's like totally the room full of people." He's like. And then 800 people on Zoom. He's like, can everyone see that I'm wearing a jacket? Yeah. Okay, you see? Jacket? Yeah. Okay. Takes off his jacket, before he starts speaking. But that's the Shalom Aleichem to him, but his sensitivity, I was very blown away from his sensitivity. He was the third one. And the fourth one, it's interesting, originally it was just going to be us three. I think they got criticism that divorce, I don't know if you know this, it involves a man and a woman. So to have just three men on, they thought might be a little bit unbalanced. So they got a female therapist on. Also, her name is Lisa Twersky. She's an author of 2 books, and she's supposed to be very well known. That was the first time I met her. I hadn't worked with her on a case like 15 years ago. I don't even remember the case. I just remember that someone was using her as a therapist. But I never directly interacted with her. Anyway... the way the panel was supposed to work was that each one of us was supposed to say our piece of why we think there's a rise in divorces in young families, and then they would do round 2 where each one of us was supposed to say what we think we could do about it. Okay, that was the idea. So the Dayan went first, and he spoke. It was more like a checklist. No, it was more like a checklist that he went through all the different aspects and things that come up, and that was. I'm not going to go through his presentation. And then after him, I spoke, and a little bit when I spoke, I was a little chutzpahdik, because a little bit like I just made believe I was starting the panel. I gave an introduction to the night, and I knew that it was a little bit of a chutzpah thing to do. But I told myself I'll be very happy for them not to invite me back. In a certain sense, I felt a little bit like you invited me. I'm insane like that. This is what I do. If it's too dangerous for you, so don't invite me back. But this is what I do. There were two things I felt needed to be said, so I just said them. The first thing I wanted to say was you're watching this thing about divorce, and there's different panelists, and they're all saying different things. So is it a machlokes? What's going on? Everyone's saying are we in competition with each other? I say this, and the other one says no. I think it's that. Oh, no, a second. But maybe we should have called it a debate. What's going on here? So I wanted to just describe how people should listen, and this is a good thing to know about things like this. How you should listen to different opinions about this stuff. So the way that I presented it was, I said, imagine you have a house, and you don't know what's going on inside. And there are different windows into the house. And you have one person stationed by each window. If you listen to what each person describes, saif kol saif, you'll get a sense of what's going on in the house. So I said, each one of us sees families from a different perspective. I was the second guy. I was just like, okay, I'm going to give an introduction because it wasn't given, and someone's got to give it. But each one of us sees, families and divorces from different angles. Listen to all of us. And by listening to all of us, you'll get a 3-dimensional view. You'll get a sense of what's going on inside. That's a good hakdama, right? So that was number 1. Number 2, and this was interesting, I had discovered over the day, and I saw in the audience 2 people that I knew that this was true about. I discovered over the day, and this is very interesting, that who not a large percentage, but a significant percentage of people that were watching that night were divorced people. Does that make sense to you? People that were divorced. There was a guy there that was in Waterbury many years ago. He was divorced and remarried. happily. He was there. Could someone explain that to me? We're here talking about how to prevent divorce. Divorce happened to this person. Why is he showing up to this thing? So it was interesting to me, and I don't think that the panelists were ready for that. I don't think they were thinking about that. But to me, it was pashut that when you go through that type of painful episode, and then there's going to be speeches about it, it became your sugya on some level. It became your sugya. It's something that you're passionate about. Maybe logically you tell yourself that you want to help other people prevent it, or that you want your second marriage to work out. But even emotionally, once a person goes through something, you just want to be there. That's your tsar. It's your yisurim. You want to sit with people that are talking about that. That's what I think it was. But then I was worried. Could you imagine someone is divorced and they're watching a panel of why people get divorced? You know why? Because today's generation, nobody cares about each other. Every word that's said, this guy's like, what, he thinks I don't care about anyone? You know, right? Today, guys aren't prepared. Oh, I guess he thinks I wasn't prepared. You know, because, like, people don't date properly. I'll tell you what they said, you know, but that's not... I was afraid. I don't know how many... I knew 2 divorced people in the room. There were 800 people on Zoom. I had no idea how many divorced people were watching. And the whole night could just be one great indictment of people that went through the worst yisurim that a person could go through. What were we doing? A mitzvah or an aveira? I wasn't prepared to do that. So I was a little chutzpahdik. I said, before I start, I feel like I have to say something. It became to my attention that there are divorced people watching this panel tonight, and I want to speak to the divorced people first. And I spoke to the divorced people. I said to them that we're here tonight to talk about what leads to divorce, and I want them to understand that in no way do we have the right to have a judgment on someone's specific situation and the complexities that led to someone's own specific personal divorce. That's not the point. And I said to them that if you are here tonight, it's because you know the pain of divorce. And if you know the pain of divorce and you joined this panel, you came to attend this panel, it's because you want to prevent that shouldn't happen anymore. And therefore I said, you and the panelists are on the same page. We're here together, we're working together. I almost wanted them, it's us together trying to help everyone else. Like that kind of a sense. And you should know that as someone came over to me afterwards to tell me, in a way, that was the most meaningful part of the panel to him. And it's an interesting thing I've been through before, that sometimes when you talk in public about things, your audience is not who it was supposed to be. I did this webinar in the summer about sex addiction I've told you about, and it was supposed to be to Rabbanim and Chassan teachers and Kala teachers. And it turned out that there was a large number of women who had gone through this issue in their marriage. And I got tons of emails. I got 2 emails from England. Okay, you ever heard of that place? Crazy. I got 2, I don't even know where it is. From not the audience I was speaking to. But it's important to be aware. Once you're in a Rishus Harabim, you have to be sensitive to everyone who's listening. So that was that. When it was then it finally came time to speak about the causes of divorce. I wasn't sure what to do. On the one hand, I wanted to speak fundamentally, foundationally. What could you do? There are guys in this room in Shidduchim. What could I do to make my marriage successful? It's not about specific details, it's about my whole approach to marriage. On the other hand, as you know, I've dealt with certain specific issues in the frum community, and I wanted to create. I have this mission to create awareness about those issues. So what I decided to do is to say that I'm going to speak about one klal and one prat. I said I'm going from macro to micro. So macro, I spoke about this whole yesod that I've spoken about here several times. I'll say it over bekitzer. But I spoke about the idea because I really, really think it makes a big difference. The way I presented it was a little bit more of a hakdama than I've done here, and I'll share that with you. And it'll be nageh. You'll see that this is, as every time we say it, it's a chizuk. The nakuda that I said was like this. If you think about this from a more psychological perspective, think about our community. Our community, the Orthodox Jewish community in America. Think about our community. Our community 40 years ago, 50 years ago, okay? We were living in America. I was born 51 years ago, okay? We were living, the 1970s, 1980s. I was born in 73, okay? 1970s, 1980s. We were living in America. We were comfortable. We were here. We were happy, okay? But it was a different tone. We were children of survivors, okay? My father was born in Germany right after the war, okay? Your fathers were not born right after the war. So even though we heard about the war, I'm saying there were tons, yesterday was the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. There was a lot of ceremonies going on. People are talking about the fact, there's a big conversation today, that the last survivors are leaving us. When I was a kid, every simcha was full of survivors. There were survivors all over. Wherever you went, there were survivors. There was no such a thing. Back in the day, when someone denied the Holocaust, you burst into laughter. Like, come on, half the people you knew went through the Holocaust. So it was a different world. But what I realized as I got older is that there was a certain mission-oriented life. I'm not talking here necessarily about frum, even by people that were not religious, but there was a certain mission-oriented life. We have to rebuild. We have to create. We have to have homes and to value that. It wasn't said. It was just absorbed. But now, it's already a generation after that, or 2 generations after that. And now, think about it. We are growing up in a society that Klal Yisrael has already lived in for 3 generations. When I talk to you about Europe, it's the furthest thing, apologies, Shalom. But when I talk about Europe, life in Europe, like the shtetl, like you're thinking about a time in history. You could learn about that, and maybe Dina Abramson will give a class about pre-war Europe. To me, I knew people that lived there as adults. Okay? I sat with a guy who told me, I was in Kletsk. I remember when Rav Aaron used to look through the window and check on the Bachar. I'm like, Kletsk, that's Rav Aaron Cutler pre-Lakewood in Europe. But I know people that grew up in Baranovich, where Rabbi Chanan was the Rosh Hashiva. You know what I mean? And the world changed. I know this sounds like I'm not talking about divorce. I really am. Because what happened was that we became a very flourishing, thriving community. We're not starving. We're not worried about extinction. We're not, and we've become very settled. And what ends up happening naturally when people become settled is that they start worrying about themselves. When you're in sakana, you worry about surviving, and you're worried about your family surviving. But when you are comfortable, so now you're worrying about you. And we worry, and we want to be happy. I said like this. I said, ask the average guy who's dating, why does he want to get married? Okay? So I said, the lowest rung are the people that are saying, lo yolenu, somebody feels that way, please see me. I'm getting married because that's what guys do at this stage. This is the thing, I guess. It's time to get married. I happen to know one person, and it's a nisayon for him, that he's, the way Hashem made him, he's just not interested in getting married. He doesn't have any weird sexual preferences. He's not, he's just, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made him in such a way that he just, he's much older than you. And he just doesn't have this drive to get married. Okay, but so when he was this age, when he was your age, he was dating because his parents were like, okay, now it's time to date. Okay. I'm not saying a person can't have a happy marriage if he dates for that reason, but I think you agree with me that it's a little bit missing. If under the chuppah, he's thinking to himself, well, I guess this is the getting married stage. I wonder what the next stage is. It's like okay, I took biology 1. I guess next I'll take biology 2. That's not really necessarily the best way to get married. Most guys and girls, I believe, if you ask them, why do you want to get married? They will say they want to get married because they're lonely. We've talked about that. They want a relationship. They want a friend. Even they want to take care of someone. They want to be with someone. But that's the reason they want to get married. And my reaction to that is, not a bad reason. All of those things are true. And if you have that feeling, I really want a girlfriend. I really do. I'm a frum guy. I'm doing everything right. It's time. I'm ready for this. I want to have that. I want to love someone. I want to know that I'm loved. I want to be with someone. I want to be with someone that I could be with on every level, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. I want to be able to be completely with someone. A single guy is not able to do that. I want that. Sounds good, no? Nice. That's good. Very real, very authentic. But it's still, Rabbi Sonnenschein, missing something. And that's the important, and I don't want to make light of that, because if you have the sensitivity to have those feelings, and I know that many people in this room do have those feelings, that's a very positive thing. That's a very, very positive reason to get married. But it's not the whole story. And if that's the whole story, it doesn't bode well for the marriage. Because what ends up happening, let me map it out for you. What ends up happening is that when I get married, the reason I got married was to be happy. And if I am not happy, it's a pircha on the whole decision that I made to get married. So a guy gets married, and his wife comes down with some condition. She gets mano, as a lot of people do after they get married. Okay? She's not well. She's nauseous all the time. She's, whatever happens, something happens. He has to take care of her. Loyalena, she's in a car accident. She's dealing with issues. Her leg became mangled. It's not pikuach nefesh, but they're dealing with surgeries and recovery for a year or two after the wedding. This guy got married, not because of any greater mission. He got married because he thought it would make him happy. And this is not making him happy. And he's not getting what he got married for. Okay, I'm not saying that is a difficult challenge. I don't wish it on anyone. It's a very difficult challenge. But does it therefore mean, what am I in this for? Can you agree with me that we want to get married? I was reading of Reb Volba last night in Alei Shor. He was writing about Emunah. So he writes, there are some people whose Emunah is emotional, and some people whose Emunah is like their reality. It's like thought out. They have a real, like, intellectual Emunah. Okay? He says, what's the difference between someone whose Emunah is just like, yeah, this is what I feel, and someone whose Emunah is rock solid? This is the only Hashem Echad, Shema Echad. There is no other reality. He said, on a regular day, the two are the same. When could you tell the difference between the two? When the feeling's not there anymore. When life gets difficult. When it feels like, if there's a Hashem, where on earth is he? Right? When it feels that way, so then the person that's rock solid, I know that Mo Muller exists. I know he exists. You can give me 15 rayas, he doesn't exist. He's right over there. He exists. I know he exists. If someone's relationship with Hashem is that way, it's rock solid. Yeah, maybe it's pain, maybe there's pain, but there's no doubt. But someone who just has this emotional, romantic relationship with Hashem, when things start getting tough, what happens? Maybe there is no Hashem. Can you understand that in marriage, how damaging that is? I got married because I wanted to feel a certain way. I wanted to be in a certain kind of relationship. It's so. I mean, what could be better than love? I wanted to love someone and be loved. That's what I wanted. I'm an emotional person. I wanted that connection. I have fun with my friends, but guys are guys. There's still a certain part of me that stays locked up. And I want to unlock that part of me. Okay, that's beautiful. Again, beautiful. Just like the emotional Emunah is beautiful. But what happens when the going gets tough? What happens when things come out about her personality that I didn't realize before the chasana? And suddenly I'm seeing this part of her personality that sometimes she makes me feel bad. Or she has a rough edge to her. Or she doesn't keep the house the way I thought the house would, because I'm very sensitive. The things should be neat. She doesn't seem to have it together. Or whatever. And by the way, the things I'm describing, in case anyone's feeling horrified, happen all the time. Okay? So if you're horrified, again, speak to me or come to a few more Tuesday mornings, because we got to work this out. Okay? Because these types of discoveries and dealing with, that is marriage. Okay? You're going to have a child and you're going to discover how your wife relates to having children. There's no way for you to know now unless it's a second marriage. Okay? You don't know. So is she nervous about kids? Is she a very nervous mother? Is she going to be running to the doctor 2 or 3 times a day? Is she a neglectful mother? What's her chinuch b'chlal? You don't know. There's a certain level when you get married where you're like, okay, we're going to see how things unfold. She's an excellent person. I'm going to marry her and we're going to work things out together. Some of those things, maybe most of those things are going to be wonderful. There will be challenges. What is going to happen when those challenges hit? just I got married for love. Look at the world we live in. Love is the value of the United States of America. Okay, at least Hollywood, let's say. Okay, so even in the secular culture that we live in, falling in love with someone else's wife is valid because love trumps all, right? So it's yeah, but then what happens? Then what happens? There's another nekuda that should be a part of our world when we're deciding to get married, that could make all the difference and keep a person so much happier than what I'm describing. Because what I'm describing is a roller coaster ride of emotions. And nobody we like roller coasters perhaps, not I, but maybe some of you. But roller coaster of emotions, I don't know anyone that likes. And that is, I'm getting married because it's my achrayus to get married. Because I have a home to build. Because Hashem wants me to have children. Because my dozens of generations before me are counting on me to bring it to another generation. Because I'm going to have children that I'm going to share my world with. If that sounds too beyond you, you have to think again. Because if you want to get married in a way that to use what I think is the appropriate word, even if not everyone knows what it means, to use the vicissitudes of life, okay, to not be knocked over by them, to not the ups and downs, to not be knocked over them, to be able to carry steadily through. It's because I'm on a mission. I'm doing this for a reason. All the things I said about love, by the way, keep there. They're great. But there has to be something, let's slip in under it. You know, like you have a building that's a little shaky, so they'll put in the basement, they'll put in foundations. Let's dig a little in the basement, let's put in a foundation. And that foundation is, I have a responsibility here. And that means that when I marry a girl, I am responsible for her. And responsible to her. And it's my job to carry her. And to take care of her. Because I carry an achrayus that I'm bringing to the next generation. Can you understand? I'm not sure if everybody can. Can you understand that achrayus is not the depressing part of marriage? In fact, that achrayus is where the real simcha comes from. When a person takes on his life, suddenly he matters. You're important. There's a chashivas to what you're doing. The world is counting on you. This is your mission. You know, we're going to die one day. Our families are what we leave over. You're going to have children that are going to stand by your levaya. I'm sorry for being morbid, but I'm not really being morbid. I'm really describing something joyful. You're going to have children standing by your levaya, talking about what a great dad you were. That's bigger than I want to be happy, isn't it? Isn't it a bigger kind of I want to be happy? Isn't it a certain type of connection and happiness that transcends? This is not like, I got maybe because this was on my mind, this morning I was drinking a coffee before davening, I was walking down the hall outside my office, and I saw that sign up. I don't even know what the rest of the sign said. I just saw underlined, do you love sports? Okay, now I'm thinking here about love and everything, like, do you love sports? It was like the wrong time to see that sign. I was like, we shouldn't have a sign up that says, do you love sports? It's the wrong word. You could enjoy sports. You're like, I love sports. This is my anniversary with sports. I really, there's a connection, me and sports. We have a connect. If I get an injury, so I have to go to a therapist because me and sports haven't been together in a while. No, you don't love sports. You enjoy sports. We same thing with loving ice cream, my wife always says, if you love it, don't eat it. If you love, you love Hashem, you love the Torah, you love your family, you love your friends. That's who you love. That's connection. But you don't love. Think about it. I'm not anti-sports. I'm all for it. But you don't love sport. Ava, it's just the wrong word. We're crazy in English. We just like, I love skiing. You don't love skiing. You don't get choked up and start, reach for a tissue when you talk about skiing. You enjoy skiing. You know what I'm saying? But in any event, there's something bigger. There's something more profound. I said this much longer now, but I said I was going to say it shorter. But this, I hold that this is a huge foundation. This is a huge, huge foundation. And if you go into dating and marriage with this sense, I promise you, you will be happier, not less happy. You will be happier. There's a joy. There's a joy in, I'm doing something big, important. I took upon myself. I was chosen for this. There's a joy in that, and getting it. Do you understand that sense of like doing something chashuv and getting the job done, and it's meaningful, and you built something that's a link in the nitzchias of Klal Yisrael? Do you understand what that means? There's something massive about that, and that I think it can't be overstated. And I hope you think I got the point across. Even you heard the recording. What? And it sounds like. It may sound abstract, and trust me, after that I got very, very specific about my micro point. But this point I think is very, very important. Every single person in this room will be a different chassan when you get engaged. If you're getting engaged with a sense of, yes, it's about connection and companionship and friendship and depth and intimacy, for sure, the level of intimacy with a wife is unparalleled in the universe. Besides with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's unparalleled. But there's something, I'm putting supports under that. All of that is to support the mission that I have. I'm building a home. You know where you find this very interesting? Where you find this difference? Is that nowadays it's very, very, very normal. I'm not discouraging it, but it's very, very normal for a chassan and kala to come to their Rebbe or their Rav and to say, we don't want to have children right away. Okay? That was unheard of when I was younger. It's an unheard of thing. Like, why are you getting married? What do I mean by that? What I mean is that when the world was getting married, because we have a mission, so then we got married and we then got into the mission. We have a home to build. During Shabbat Brachas, you hear 7 trillion times. Many of you just say it at the end of your Shabbat Brachas, but you don't even know what you're saying. Anybody have idea what that means? First of all, to be baina means to build. That means that the chassan and kala are getting married because they're here to build. You think in the world out there, when someone does their toast to the bride and groom, okay, we all watch enough to know what's going on, right? So you're honored with giving a toast. I read books about speech, how to give speeches. So there's always a chapter on how to give a toast. I'm an expert. Okay, I've never done it, but there's always a chapter on how to give a toast. You get up in front of the bride and groom and say, I want to wish for you that you should be able to build. Well, this is not a construction company we're starting. We're in love. We're married. What are we building? Maybe some of them could get it. It's certainly not culturally the thing to say. But that's why their divorce rate is the way it is. Because it's not about that. You go to a Sheva Brachas of a frum couple and you say you should be zoicha to build, you're talking about the roots of what we're doing. You know what a bias ne'eman is? Does anybody know? What's a bias ne'eman? Okay, you've all said it, right? You should be zoicha to have a bias ne'eman, be the bias ne'eman, bias ne'eman Yisrael. Any idea what it is? Anyone? Bias ne'eman? What's ne'eman? What does that mean?
Understand?
Yes. Ne'eman means dependable, trustworthy. Like when you take there's a phrase like when you're banging the posts of a tent into the ground. It's called a yased, which is a tent ne'eman. It's ingrained. It doesn't budge. Okay, that's a bias ne'eman. How romantic is that? You should be zoicha to build a steadfast home, a reliable home, a trustworthy home. But yeah, that's what it's all about. If you do that, you're ensuring your nitzchias. Fill it with love. Fill it with intimacy. I am not an anti-intimacy guy. I am a totally pro-intimacy guy. Okay, like crazy. I'm totally, totally pro. But I'm telling you that it is shallow and in danger. The intimacy itself is in danger if my goal here is the intimacy. If my goal is to build a bias ne'eman, so then the intimacy fills that bias with incredible joy. And by the way, the person that you're madly in love with, because the two of you fell in love, because that's what a young boy and a young girl do, okay, that's one level of intimacy. I'm not that impressed. You know what's impressive? The intimacy of two people who are on a life mission together to build a home. That's intimacy. There are billions of people in this world that never did and never will experience the intimacy that the average yeshiva guy that gets married for the right reason will appreciate. Okay, this is a separate shmooze we'll get to maybe later in the year. That yeshiva guys think that we have some like deficits in the enjoyment area in our marriages, and I am here to tell you that there is nobody that will have more joy, passion, intimacy, connection in their marriage than a boy and girl that get married for the purpose of building something solid. Then plug intimacy into that, and you have an explosion. There's an explosion. You can't even get near it, the level of love and intimacy. So that was, I said that all in, I think, 3 minutes by the panel. But that was the point. That was the chizuk that I'm giving everyone. Chazer this, work on this. I'm telling you, what I'm giving you is not the solution to problems. What I'm giving you is a way to avoid having the problems. And that's a very, very, very valuable thing. Be'ezer Hashem, next time I'll continue the panel. I'll continue telling you because there were other very valuable yesaidas. But for now, we'll allow you guys to get to the base medrash.